Yes, I don't care, so sue me. Uh, I don't know why, but around 3 o'clock in the morning or so, my brain just explodes. I mean, that's not quite right. I mean, yeah, sometimes I could be tired and I guess honestly a little manic, but at other times, I don't know. It's like sometimes I get on online discussions on the comment sections, and it's like I'm talking about a lot of specific things. And common words that come up are cultural Marxism, a lot of buzzwords. And that's okay because I'd like to think at least I have some cursory knowledge of what those things mean. But I think it really boils down to one basic thing. I did another video, but I tried to do it a voice video and just illustrate everything I'm trying to show in pictures. And instead of like just finding pictures online and putting them on there, and I'm coming to the conclusion that that's hard. I don't know. That video's like 5 months old now, and it's just like I just keep drawing something, and it's like, oh my god, this needs to freaking be done, you know. And it's always fun when you do a 6 month project and you get like 32 views. Okay, fine, be that way, world. But what I was saying was that when it comes down to one thing, and that's specifically, we're talking about objective morality. Like, is this thing right? Is this thing wrong? Why is this right or wrong? What values do you really hold? And it's like, I don't know, for me, the reason, oh, boo, he's a conservative. No, but, the reason I hold some of those views is because, like, well, there's this police song called Invisible Sun. And, god damn, there. And it's like that. It's like that because it feels like, well, I hate to say it, but the closest thing that it does feel like is like Christian faith. I absolutely do not support the supernatural. The supernatural does not exist. There is nothing but the stars and the skies and the birds and the trees. There's nothing out there. And yet, that's hard to accept. And I come to at least a cursory conclusion that maybe while religion is, I don't know, the words fail me now. While it's self-evident and anecdotal, it always had a grain of truth to it, because while these ancient Bronze Age peoples did not understand science or nature, they did understand innately the world around them. And from a less advanced knowledge, but not any more intricate. they didn't understand why things happened, but they did understand innately what happens. And I think that's basically a fundamental truth in our reality. Even though paradoxically, it expresses opinions that are religious in nature that I think reflect a truth that is inherently systemic to our reality from a aspect of just the natural world. That's why I say an invisible sun, because it's like there is an aspect to people that is inherently self-destructive. Life seems to thrive, or life not seems, life strives to survive. And that is very true of all life. However, that's life in general, not life in individual. In individual, there seems to be a innate innate aspect of our core selves that is programmed to self-destruct. I mean, death is an eventual inevitability. But the way nature handles it is the best way to perpetuate the species from that inevitability. And sometimes just because of randomness and the way life is in a world of entropy governed by the laws of physics and nature, this doesn't always benefit the species perfectly. Like, for example, a very good example, why do horses run in burning barns? Now, there could be some psychological aspect to it, but I think just like freaking animals who shouldn't have a complete esoteric understanding of their life and morality, except on a perhaps varying degree of their advancement and innate sense of their own mortality, although I'm not sure. I think all living things understand on some level their aspect of pain and suffering. You know. However, they grasp the larger idea of living. It's like pigs. You know, I watch hunting videos, and pigs freaking rattle a chain and they'll freak out and run away, right? But you shoot them with a rifle from hundreds of miles away and they'll stand right next to their friend who just keeled over and fall down and dead, and they'll just take another bite of food and like, that's weird. You know, there's no innate understanding that something that harmed his friend might harm him. You know, so that ability to understand one's own morality is limited. And why human beings are the way they are is just totally insane. What's wrong with this species, right? And that's why, especially in human beings, although in all life to some degree, there is that sense of self-destruction. And being a social conservative, that's why I'm like, well, everyone talks about their rights, oh my God, I'm being oppressed because of my race and my sexuality and my gender. And no. You do not understand the privilege you have. You think privilege is about demographics and economics and class. And while there is some aspect to that, the real privilege is the privilege of leading a life with the privilege of a society that supports your choices technologically. Everything that is around you, more or less, is supported by a technological framework. The power, the infrastructure, the security, everything that makes the world good and bad technologically now is giving you a privilege. And people don't see this when they make these arguments. The reason there were gender roles, the reason people objected to freaking rampant promiscuity, the reason that they freaking rejected freaking homosexuality, the reason that freaking the mentally ill were shunned, more or less, was basically because while they didn't have the knowledge, they also didn't have the technology or the infrastructure to deal with it. And you have to consider, too, that the further you go back in time, the smaller the populations were. The bigger the world was. What we're reading in the Old West and ancient Rome, wouldn't even cover a whole city today. Well, actually, numbers, and that's worth looking up because, but basically, I don't have the numbers right at hand, but generally, whole areas of influence that are historically relevant in the past by population wouldn't even make up frigging one or two major metropolises today. Of course, they were influenced because that's all they were, but the population sizes also influenced the demographics, not demographics. They influence the ways that society worked. It's inherently different with different sized groups or different groups within each other, subject to the technology, the privilege of the technology. So that's where I come from a lot, is because I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, that's technological privilege, that's technological privilege, that's obfuscation, that isn't real, and that's freaking dangerous. But we're supposed to be freaking tolerant and inclusive and freaking, no. You can't make a truism and justify your views, but at the same time, this postmodernist bullshit is something that I see in the rhetoric again and again and again in the progressive circles, and it's wrong. I just feel that inherently it's wrong. And I'm not a traditionalist. I would consider myself a social libertarian. Because I'm like, hey, you can you do what you want to do. I'll do what I want to do. And I think we could both agree that we don't have to have a authoritarianism to do that. To some degree. Some degree, of course, we do. But then, you know, like when I was a kid in the 60s, and, well, 60s and 70s, you know, the whole point of libertarianism, or the whole point of being a liberal, was that you were being a nonconformist. You were fighting the establishment. Remember that when you used to fight the establishment? Now it's like, you know, the liberals are the establishment. And wait a minute, what happened? When did we go from frigging fighting for freedom to being the ones that had to fight for it? I mean, now it's the establishment is the far progressive left. Except in business and religion. You know, and even then, friggin' that's crumbling away with the corporatism and the friggin', you know, neo-Marxist friggin' social justice stuff. And it's like, wow, you really don't see your friggin' technological privilege, do you? And that's why there is an invisible sun. Because that reality of the laws of physics and nature are still there. They are still there. And hearing about all this talk of freaking microaggressions and freaking and safe spaces and freaking toxic masculinity, and it's like, the hell with you. You're a liar. You are a liar. And the authoritarian right are pretty much liars too. To some point. Except, the only point is even though I don't agree with supernatural, the only thing about fundamental Christendom, despite the obvious glaring contradictions of the Bible and what counts as freaking morality, right? Is that basically that idea that there is a fundamental force between a point of light that you go to and an aspect of destruction that is prevalent. And I agree with that. I think that conservatism is more in line, paradoxically, with the real world, at least the aspects of fundamental nature of reality and, you know, physics and chemistry and biology. How the world works is that it doesn't care about us. And I think that when we see this more clearly, we start to see the flaws in objective morality, whether it's conservative or progressive. And that's just why I just, I can only be more concerned about my own life. Not in a selfish way, but if I'm going to be concerned about life, I should tend my own garden, so to speak. I think that's the most important point. Really. So I just don't understand why. Well, no, I do understand why people frigging make these arguments. It's because someone has decided that they can square the circle, basically. And the truth is that no matter what you do, you can't really get ahead until you keep trying to get ahead, because no matter what you do, human beings will gain the system. And they will do it for good, and they will do it for bad. And I think that's a problem. Until we realize it. Yeah. There's an invisible sun. And we're not seeing it. And we should.